Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her royal family. We provide you with the exciting news, King Charles heartbroken, as he releases a tragic announcement about Harry and Meghan. A study indicates that the royal family is in disarray, facing several changes and significant challenges in maintaining its image after the major controversy involving Prince Andrew, Prince Harry, and Meghan Markle. The insider said that King Charles has conclusive news for Prince Harry and Meghan. In this video, we will explore the events that led King Charles to make a decisive step, which is seen as a terrible rupture with Harry and Meghan. On October 22, 2025, Buckingham Palace insiders acknowledged what was previously deemed inconceivable. King Charles III has officially terminated all personal connection with his younger son, Prince Harry, and his bride, Meghan Markle, a decision that has reverberated from Westminster to California. No more correspondence, no transatlantic communications, and no private emissaries sent with conciliatory gestures will occur. Only quiet will prevail. Insiders assert that the quiet was a purposeful, premeditated act, the ultimate agonizing choice of a parent who had exhausted his faith and a king who had depleted his alternatives. Within Clarence House, the official London home of the king and queen consort, the midday light is dim and frigid. The king, in the third year of his reign, occupies a position by a large window, his reflection dimly visible in the glass part sovereign part mourning father. A stack of unopened mail with the Sussex's California office logo accumulates a fine coating of dust on a polished mahogany table behind him. According to palace insiders, one of them was sent weeks ago, meant as a last conciliatory gesture. It remained unopened. In Montecito, the California sun is often dazzling, but the atmosphere remains equally somber. Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, has unexpectedly canceled a scheduled promotional event for her lifestyle company, citing urgent family matters. Prince Harry, formerly the most communicative and approachable royal of his age, has been silent in public for some weeks. A confidant of the couple characterizes the ambiance of their large estate with unadorned clarity. They merely await the phone call. This is not just another royal dispute, a transient tempest in the Windsor teacup. This is the conclusive dissolution of a tie formerly deemed unbreakable, a rift now inscribed in the fundamental protocol of the crown. The father who previously went with deep sadness with his little son behind Princess Diana's coffin now keeps his distance by royal mandate. The son, who notoriously vowed to save his family at all costs, may have ultimately forfeited the one family that within the framework of his existence had the utmost significance. A profound change has occurred. A prolonged covert conflict within the House of Windsor has culminated in its last phase. What could compel a monarch, a man conditioned to represent and maintain the concept of unity, to irrevocably destroy familial bonds? What unexpressed reality is concealed behind that unanswered call? To comprehend the emergence of this regal silence, we must revisit the moment when love, revolt, and ambition intersected with the formidable burden of a millennium of tradition. The fable and the rupture. The narrative did not start with a dispute. The event started with a wedding seen by approximately 2 billion people, a worldwide display of optimism and modernity. On a sunlit day in May 2018, Prince Harry stood under the lofty Gothic arches of St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, his gaze fixed on Meghan Markle. She was an American actress, a divorcee and a lady of mixed heritage, evidently resolved to reconstitute the concept of royal in the 21st century. At one point, they represented the monarchy's ideal aspiration. Harry, the cherished renegade prince, had discovered his destiny. Meghan, characterized by her refined demeanor and commitment to social campaigning, was seen as a potent agent of change. They were contemporary, dynamic, and inherently fashionable, a connection between the traditional realm of inherited obligation and the modern sphere of international fame and social awareness. The late Queen Elizabeth II smiled. The populace loved her, and the press briefly referred to her as a fairy tale revived. However, fairy tales, as the British media often emphasizes, hardly endure the clash of authority publicity and individual character. By 2020, the conflict had transcended subtle palace intrigue and become a public spectacle. Harry and Meghan had been fatigued by what they saw as an unyielding media onslaught. Headlines labeled the Duchess as difficult and demanding. Continuous leaks from unnamed royal staffers depicted her as a lady who either failed to comprehend or rejected the stringent, unwritten protocols of the firm. Meetings between the Sussexes and top courtiers allegedly became tense behind closed doors. The couple's unprecedented and startling choice to step back from their positions as senior working royals in January 2020, a decision derisively termed Megxit by a tabloid sub-editor, disrupted the meticulously crafted facade of familial unity. Their exodus to North America was not only a withdrawal, it was a proclamation of autonomy. Subsequently, an influx of disclosures emerged that would permanently alter their connection with the royal family. The explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021 was the first significant revelation. Meghan expressed her significant mental health challenges, feelings of vulnerability, and most detrimentally, the concerns and conversations among the family around the potential darkness of their baby Archie's skin tone. The allegation of racism, while subtly expressed, targeted the core of the Commonwealth and the monarchy's reputation. Subsequently, the six-part Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan premiered in December 2022. The series unveiled the layers of royal secrets like aged wallpaper, revealing a tale of a couple expelled by an envious institution and a complicit press. In January 2023, Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, was released. It was a literary explosion, a candid and unvarnished narrative that exposed decades of family strife, psychological suffering, and profound animosity. The book described a violent confrontation with his brother, Prince William, and depicted his stepmother, Queen Consort Camilla, as a strategic person who had meticulously maneuvered to establish her status. For King Charles, who had taken the throne barely 4 months earlier in September 2022, each disclosure represented not only a familial injury, but also a constitutional peril. Monarchies are designed to withstand exterior scandals. Nevertheless, internal betrayal exposed to a worldwide audience inflicts a more profound wound than political strife. He confronted a realm already fractured by Brexit and economic instability, and now his own son was resolute on revealing his truth, irrespective of the repercussions for the crown. Nevertheless, among the turmoil, there were subtle murmurs of optimism. Several brief, formal telephone conversations were allegedly conducted before the coronation in May 2023. A rumor emerged that the Sussexes had prepared an apology, which was ultimately not sent. However, the atmosphere between father and son had become too tenuous to sustain communication. While the world saw the grandeur of crowns and cameras, a more subdued conflict was commencing not in the headlines, but inside the esteemed chambers of the High Court. The Prince as complainant. As Prince Harry entered the Royal Courts of Justice in London, the paparazzi's flashbulbs erupted like lightning. This was an unconventional royal appearance. He was no longer the rebellious prince of his childhood. He had become a man on a purpose equipped not with a title, but with a legal team. The tabloids had tormented him for years. He now confronted them using the entire authority of the law as his weapon. To several backers, it seemed virtuous a campaign for privacy and responsibility. To his family, it seemed very perilous. The litigation involving Mirror Group newspapers, MGN, which culminated in late 2023, included issues beyond mere phone hacking or unlawful information acquisition. Many palace onlookers saw it as a matter of retribution. Harry's triumph, yielding substantial damages of $140,800, garnered global attention. However, it exacerbated a wound that was already too severe to mend. Why continue to combat phantoms? A top royal assistant was said to have murmured to a colleague. The emotion embodied the palace's fundamental principle of never complain, never explain. Harry's campaign was a blatant breach of that enduring, however contentious doctrine. For Harry, the specters of the past were not just abstractions. Ghosts perpetually haunt, he once said, explicitly alluding to the media intrusion he attributes to his mother's demise. Each return to London for court sessions was more brief and devoid of substance. He often arrived unexpectedly on a commercial airline, proceeded directly to his legal engagements, and then vanished on a night trip back to California. There were no private luncheons with his brother William, no afternoon tea with his father, not even a solitary conversation with former comrades from his military service. An insider from the palace characterized it as a revolving door of silence. In a short visit in February 2024, Harry allegedly spoke via intermediaries to obtain an audience with the king. Charles, now undergoing his first cancer treatment, was instructed by his physicians to relax and refrain from stressful circumstances. The meeting did not occur. It is said that the king's confidential secretary put a handwritten note from Harry on his desk that night. It stayed unopened until the next morning when Queen Camilla discreetly placed it in a drawer concealed from view. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, Harry's cousins, and once his closest confidants within the family, tried to maintain connection. They would convene for intimate meals in New York or communicate via SMS when royal schedules permitted. However, they became cautious, cognizant that any affiliation may be seen as a violation of the tacit palace protocol. A friend of Eugenie told The Times, "We hold him in deep affection. However, proximity to him now resembles treading on shards of glass. One cannot predict the contents of the next book." Concurrently, in California, Meghan's public presence had diminished. The long interviews and keynote addresses were eliminated. Insiders report that she advised Harry to abandon the legal disputes. "We have already recounted our narrative," she allegedly informed him. "It is time to construct our future." However, for Harry, the courtroom had transformed into a surrogate for the familial discourse he could no longer engage in. It was a location where he might ultimately attain a conclusive judgment, a decisive victory, even if it was not the absolution he really desired. Nevertheless, every judicial triumph incurred a public expense. The British public opinion, formerly overwhelmingly supportive, became starkly divided. One faction saw him as a valiant purveyor of truth, while the other perceived him as a betrayer of his family and nation. Surveys performed in the spring of 2024 indicated that his personal approval rating among UK inhabitants had declined to just 23%. That figure was detrimental for the monarchy. The king's son has become the most untrusted senior royal. The real rupture, however, sprang not from verbal exchanges in court, but from the omissions that remained unarticulated. On Harry's 40th birthday in September, the royal family's official social media accounts were inactive. No official statement was issued by Buckingham Palace or Kensington Palace. In Montecito, his staff allegedly placed 2 phones on the table in his home office, one British and one American, awaiting a call that never occurred. By midnight, both displays were unlit. That evening, an intimate acquaintance messaged him, "Perhaps it is time to cease efforts." Harry's response consisted of 3 words: "He remains Dad." For a guy who had lost his mother to the harshness of media scrutiny and now felt he was losing his father to a barrier of silence, the pattern was excruciatingly familiar. He transitioned from royal soldier to royal exile, from prince to plaintiff, a man increasingly characterized more by his litigation than by his heritage. As Harry immersed himself more in his legal endeavors, another phase awaited his wife, one that would thrust the pair into a markedly different but equally demanding kind of scrutiny. The Montecito rebranding. In Montecito, an expansive area by the beach, Meghan Markle was organizing a resurgence. The grand gates of their 9-bedroom estate, once emblematic of their withdrawal from public life, had suddenly become a film set. The Netflix cameras, a recognizable fixture, were operational once again. This time, however, it was not for confessions or accusations, but for something more peaceful and curated. The title of the new series is With Love, Meghan. Promoted as a lifestyle series including cooking, gardening, and contemplations on appreciation, it was evident from the beginning that this was more than just a program. It constituted a journey of redemption. Audiences were assured of a gentler, more compassionate Meghan who would instruct them on cultivating tranquility and aesthetics in a chaotic environment. The debut was deliberately timed for August 2025. However, California had a conflagration. Catastrophic flames ravaged Santa Barbara County, transforming the serene blue sky into a hue of rust and necessitating the evacuation of thousands. While rescue personnel contended with the fires, Meghan's meticulously orchestrated commercial effort reached an ethical dilemma. Shortly after the flames began, her team unveiled a pre-planned clip depicting her skillfully arranging flowers and cooking veggies in gentle, romantic candlelight. Social media exploded. Insensitive Duchess prepares meals as California suffers from wildfires, one headline said. The hashtag, Montecito fires Meghan bakes, became trending within hours. Meghan's team hastily issued a statement stating that the tape was recorded months before the incident and expressed their condolences to all those impacted. They declared a substantial contribution to local fire relief funds. However, in the realm of public perception, attempts at damage control can exacerbate the situation. American pundits exhibited a dichotomy of opinions. Some said that she was being unjustly singled out, subjected to a standard that no other celebrity would encounter. Others saw it as a fundamental misinterpretation of the general sentiment, indicating that she was disconnected. However, in more subdued areas of the internet, an alternative discourse was occurring. Numerous observers noted a lady endeavoring maybe excessively to establish a life and a brand independent of the stifling influence of the palace. She faces condemnation, whether she speaks or remains silent, a fan said on Instagram under the teaser. The comment area transformed into a virtual arena of compassion and fatigue. Upon the premiere of the first episode in September, interest prevailed over criticism. During its first weekend, over 6 million viewers engaged, underscoring the couple's persistent yet divisive celebrity influence. Individuals observed not just out of affection, but due to an inability to avert their gaze. In a pristine, cream-hued kitchen, Meghan discussed healing through small rituals, while kneading bread with well-groomed hands. Her voice, polished and calming, quivered, just once upon the mention of her children, Archie and Lilibet. "I merely desire for them to feel secure," she said gently, her eyes shimmering under the opulent studio illumination. Astute observers and royal analysts detected the nuanced meaning. On that day, she was preparing a family-style bread known as the olive branch loaf. It remains uncertain if this was a significant coincidence or a calculated message to the palace. However, the tabloids immediately portrayed it as a gastronomic appeal for reconciliation. Insiders discreetly reported her emotional fatigue. A producer on the program subsequently informed Vanity Fair that Meghan often remained after production, concluded scrutinizing the raw tape of herself and evaluating every word and gesture. "She aims to achieve accuracy this time," the producer said. "She is apprehensive about being misinterpreted once more. That may be the fundamental tragedy of Meghan Markle. Her unyielding pursuit to govern her own story has, in several respects, ensnared her inside it. The more she efforts to convey genuineness, the more a doubtful audience perceives artifice." In England, royal advisors observed the release time of the program with sarcastic accuracy only weeks after King Charles's first public return to responsibilities after his health crisis. "She consistently capitalizes on every opportunity for media attention," said one insider. However, even some of the most steadfast palace personnel secretly conceded that the film of her assisting at local food banks after the fires was genuine. The inquiry persisted, suspended between two continents. Was she really transforming or just rebranding? While Meghan sought to redefine her personal narrative, a more grave reality was unfolding across the Atlantic, one beyond her influence. The king's health was deteriorating, and with it, the last tenuous link that may have reunited this disjointed family. The Royal Edict. The first rumors emerged in early March 2025, appearing in the subtly phrased articles of The Telegraph. A palace insider discreetly informed us that King Charles has been urged by his medical staff to temporarily withdraw from public engagements. In a matter of days, the rumor transformed into an undeniable official truth. Buckingham Palace announced that the king will halt all public engagements to commence another course of therapy. The statement, albeit succinct and lacking in specifics, elicited a noticeable wave of concern across Britain. The monarch's health was evidently more fragile than previously understood. Clarence House was tranquil. Queen Camilla had private meetings with essential advisors, her expression resolute but fatigued. A draft of a public statement awaited her on a substantial desk, a statement poised to capture global headlines. It commenced, "His Majesty has opted to concentrate on his recuperation and state affairs." The true implication resided in the last statement. All personal matters will remain confidential at this juncture. The latter 6 words were premeditated. They provided protection. An implicit but widely acknowledged declaration was made: Harry and Meghan are absent for the foreseeable future. Subsequently, palace reports said that King Charles made the decision in conjunction with his wife and closest advisors. They cautioned him against jeopardizing another family catastrophe during his physical and psychological rehabilitation. A royal aide said he required tranquility, not supplication. He learned about his father's deteriorating health via a royal statement in Montecito, like a thunderclap. Harry acquired the particulars from a former equerry via email correspondence. Meghan recommended that he make contact according to sources. "Simply contact him," she implored. "Your progenitor." Harry stopped. His efforts in the preceding months were greeted with silence, unanswered text messages, ignored correspondence, and polite but firm refusals relayed via private secretaries. He made another attempt. He dialed his father's personal number. Following 3 rings, a standard voicemail message started. He did not leave a message. No more tries. On March 21st, the palace issued a statement that garnered global media attention. CNN described it as a tragic confirmation of the royal estrangement. The Daily Mail featured the headline, "Charles Cuts the Line." American late-night hosts humorously commented on royal edicts prohibiting family visits. However, underneath the tabloid tumult, a more momentous event was unfolding. This was the moment the public saw it was not a dispute. The formal farewell was cold and apathetic. Queen Camilla steadfastly defended her spouse, conveying to intimate associates that the king's heart could no longer endure emotional ambushes. She had observed him recoil at each mention of Harry and all news about family tragedies. "It is no longer anger," she murmured. "Self-preservation." Individuals with infrequent access to the palace remembered a weary but resolute man. They saw a father who loved his child, but a monarch who prioritized stability above a tumultuous relationship. Nonetheless, Charles, seated in his recuperation chair with a silver-gray blanket draped over his knees and a collection of news clippings on the table behind him, conveyed a contrasting story. One page has Meghan cooking her olive branch loaf, while another shows Harry challenging the High Court. Prior to flipping the pages, he surreptitiously scrutinized both. Senior personnel referred to April as quiet mode for the royal family. Public engagements diminished. Press briefings diminished. Upon King Charles's return in May, appearing more svelte and beaming for the cameras, the media heralded it as a national triumph. However, one photograph from that day gained notoriety for another purpose. A small, unoccupied chair was positioned behind the Queen Consort for his first public address. The aim remained undisclosed. However, spectators speculated, was it symbolic, a commemoration for an individual who had departed? The king's popularity increased. Surveys indicate his approval rating is at 72%, the highest since the coronation. The narrative of Charles the esteemed patriarch confronting illness and betrayal with composed dignity has become well recognized. Harry and Meghan have vanished from royal discussions. Harry's loss was intimate, not political. Acquaintances assert he traversed his lawn with his dog that evening, perusing antiquated photographs of himself and his father, enjoying polo matches and fishing in Balmoral waterways. He maintained silence for many hours. Meghan forfeited her prudent optimism. "If not now, then never," she said to a companion. This imposed silence lasted for months. The monarchy progressed. The Sussexes sought refuge in the tranquility of California. However, speculation continued that the king's private border established during his illness may become a permanent policy. Subsequently, October 22, 2025, Buckingham Palace sent a concise 10-line statement to all major news networks at 6:57 p.m. London time. The last statement immobilized the globe in order to focus on his recovery and maintain a serene and stable institution. His Majesty King Charles III will cease personal interactions with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. This choice reflects the persistent yearning for solitude and tranquility. 3 minutes later, all networks transmitted live news. The anchors conveyed the sentences gravely as if announcing a royal demise. Gasps, amazement, and silence ensued. The lineage of the monarch father was expunged. The tranquility of March had now become a royal decree. When a sovereign commands silence, it endures, transforms into history. A muted reverberation. The king's decision reverberated around the world for days and weeks. What started as a personal constraint evolved into a royal strategy, a communication freeze to avert more turmoil. All employees, journalists, and distant relatives were instructed to refrain from mentioning the Sussexes. In the expansive corridors of Windsor and Buckingham Palace, Harry and Meghan seem to have been deliberately excluded from the contemporary narrative, not intentionally, but due to institutional exigencies. The human toll of such an erasure consistently exceeds what headlines suggest. Charles seemed organized, but was more slender, pallid, and absorbed in thought. Staff saw his prolonged examination of public handwritten notes and his propensity to repeatedly ask whether California mail had arrived. Harry and Meghan across the Atlantic were also adapting to the profound absence. They openly highlighted our future and philanthropy. Friends discreetly observed the expense. Harry seemed particularly disoriented. The British press exhibited restraint for once. A top royal correspondent from the BBC said, "Everyone is fatigued." The audience, courtiers, and critics are fatigued after 5 years of disappointment. With the onset of winter in London, preparations for the King's Christmas broadcast were underway. Sources said that the script versions had themes of hope, meditation, and the arduous path to forgiveness. Harry sat serenely at the window in Montecito, drinking tea while seeing his father on television. Charles addressed faith, endurance, and comprehension. Notwithstanding his regal demeanor, his eyes conveyed anguish. In every family, he continued, pausing enough for the globe to converge, there are periods of estrangement and instances where silence imparts lessons that words cannot convey. Harry blinks vigorously in Montecito. Not only an utterance, an indirect communication, a clarification, not a solicitation. The universal and subtle agony of family is the essence of the royal narrative. A public conflict has subtly transformed into a global contemplation on forgiveness. Harry wanted to converse. Charles preferred tranquility. Both were accurate and inaccurate. In families, whether royal or otherwise, truth often involves prioritizing listening over speaking more forcefully. Several weeks later, a royal footman tidying the king's private study discovered a little unadorned envelope in a desk drawer. It was unmarked, save for Charles's intricate handwriting, for when he is prepared. The only photograph depicted a fading image of red-haired Harry on his first day of school, his little hand clasped in his father's. Neither more nor less. This may finish the narrative. The silent torment of affection and bereavement may serve as the genesis once again. As history recurs within the House of Windsor, lessons learned belatedly are once again examined by the subsequent generation. The globe will observe and anticipate. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.